Have you ever tried so hard to improve your English, but the more you study, the more you feel like a failure? As if everyone else was born with a language that you will never own? What if the real problem is not your brain, not your age, not your accent, but a silent wound inside your heart? In this video, through my true story in Denmark, I will show you how love can rebuild your English voice. Opening hook in pain. Imagine standing completely alone in a foreign country where the air feels heavier, even the silence feels louder, and every person around you seems to carry a language you cannot touch. You can see life happening, but it feels like watching the world through a thick glass window. So close your fingertips almost feel the warmth, yet far enough that you cannot truly enter. And deep down a quiet voice whispers, maybe English just isn't for you. Not because you are lazy, not because you are weak, but because you are exhausted from trying. Your motivation didn't disappear, it slowly leaked out through disappointment, comparison, and lonely practice sessions where no one noticed your effort. The strange part is this. Most people think learning English is only about vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. But the truth is much darker and more human. Language is emotional. When your heart is wounded, your brain becomes your bodyguard, blocking everything that feels risky, including speaking. Psychologists call this emotional learning paralysis, which means the mind is fully capable, but the emotional system refuses to cooperate, like a door that is technically unlocked but refuses to open because it has learned fear instead of safety. You see, humans can survive days without sunlight, weeks without food, and hours without sleep, but we cannot survive without connection, not real connection. Without belonging, English becomes noise instead of meaning. Without emotional safety, your mouth knows the words but refuses to release them. That's why you can read English, type English, even think in English, but freeze when a real human looks into your eyes and waits for your voice. It's not stupidity, it's self-protection. Your nervous system would rather stay silent than risk humiliation. And maybe no one told you this, but the moment English becomes a battlefield, your brain chooses peace, even if that peace feels like isolation. You are not lazy. You are tired of failing in front of people who never understood your story. You are not slow, you are carrying invisible emotional weight. And yes, you are smart enough, but your heart needs permission to speak before your mouth can. This video is not about perfect accents, expensive courses, magical shortcuts, or the usual motivational speech that disappears after 2 hours. This is a real story from Denmark, about how a quiet man, who never tried to teach me English, unintentionally taught me the one thing every language student secretly needs. The feeling that you are loved even when you speak imperfectly. Because when the heart is finally safe, the voice can finally live. Arriving in Denmark. Have you ever walked into a new country and felt like your soul didn't arrive with your passport? That was exactly how my brain reacted the moment I stepped out of Copenhagen airport. Everything looked peaceful, clean, organized, and beautifully silent, but inside my chest, there was a tiny earthquake. The air was cold, the language sounded like soft thunder mixed with marbles rolling in someone's mouth, and every sign, every street name, every announcement felt like a puzzle designed for someone much smarter than me. I didn't feel like I had just moved to another country. I felt like I had accidentally landed on a different planet where my entire identity became invisible. If you've ever moved abroad, you know that airports lie. They welcome you with smiles and calm music, but the real challenge begins the moment you realize you can't even answer a simple question like, "Do you need a receipt?" without freezing like a broken robot. My brain acted like it needed permission to speak, as if English was a dangerous button I shouldn't press. And the strangest part was this: I already knew English, I studied it for years, and I passed plenty of tests. But in Denmark, my English felt like a paper umbrella in a snowstorm. Pretty, useless, and immediately broken. Here is something the textbooks never tell you. Language is not built from vocabulary lists. It is built from safety. Your nervous system must believe you belong before your mouth can speak. When my feet touched that new ground, my nervous system whispered, "Warning! You don't belong here." And that tiny sentence became the invisible cage where my English stayed locked inside. There's a psychological term for this emotional shutdown: linguistic identity suppression. It happens when your brain thinks speaking is equal to risk. Not risk of death, but risk of embarrassment, judgment, or rejection. And your brain, unfortunately, confuses emotional risk with physical danger. That's why you can know grammar and still stay silent. Your mind is not broken. It is protecting you like an overprotective security guard who doesn't understand the mission. During my first days in Denmark, every sound felt unfamiliar. The way people spoke softly yet fast, the way they paused with no rush, the way silence was normal, not awkward. It was like stepping into a library disguised as a country. Denmark taught me very early that communication wasn't just about speaking. It was about existing peacefully in someone else's rhythm. And at that moment I realized something painful but important. If I wanted to survive here, I wouldn't need more grammar. I would need more courage. The Stepfather story. Let me take you into the quiet house where my real lesson began. Not in a classroom, not in an English-speaking club, and not in any self-study routine powered by motivational quotes. It happened in a small Danish home with soft yellow lights, minimal furniture, and a man who barely spoke more than necessary. He was not my biological dad. He was my Danish stepfather, tall, calm, polite, and wrapped in a silence that felt more like a wall than a personality trait. His presence was like Scandinavian winter, peaceful to admire, but impossible to warm up to if you didn't know how that we didn't share blood, culture, language, humor, memories, or even the same definition of family. And honestly, at first we didn't share comfort either. Every dinner felt like a slow, awkward movie scene without background music. He would cut his food neatly, chew slowly, nod occasionally, and smile like a gentle ghost just to prove he wasn't dangerous. Meanwhile, I sat there like a malfunctioning AI robot, terrified that he might suddenly ask a question in English and expose how broken my confidence was. He never pushed conversation, and that confused me. Where I came from, love was loud, warm, full of questions, instructions, and expectations. But his version was silent, distant, and almost invisible. I didn't know if he liked me, tolerated me, or didn't care at all. And because there was no clear answer, my brain created its own, the worst one. He probably doesn't want to talk to you because your English is not good enough. That thought became poison. But here's the twist. Sometimes silence is not rejection, it is respect. I discovered later that Danish culture values personal space more than emotional urgency. People don't rush, they don't demand, they don't interrogate, and they don't force connections. They let relationships grow like trees, not fireworks. There was one tiny detail that changed everything. Every morning when I woke up and walked into the kitchen, he had already prepared bread, cheese, tea, and placed an extra clean plate in front of my seat. Not beside his, not across the table, but exactly there where I belonged. He didn't leave a note. No good morning. No enjoy your breakfast. Just a silent message. You have a place here. That was the first English lesson he ever taught me, without saying a word. You can memorize 10,000 English words and still fail to speak if your heart does not know where it belongs. Yet one silent act of acceptance can do what grammar never will. Unlock the mouth by healing the heart. I didn't know it yet, but that breakfast plate would eventually rebuild my voice. Silent love observations. Imagine living with someone who speaks the same language of silence as you. Not because you planned it, but because neither of you knows how to cross the invisible bridge. That was my daily life with my stepfather. There were no heart-to-heart conversations, no deep emotional debates, no tell me about your dreams moments. Instead, it was a quiet choreography where both of us moved around the house like two satellites, orbiting, never crashing, never touching, yet somehow connected by a gravitational pull that only later I learned to recognize as love. At first, I misinterpreted everything. His short answers felt cold. His silence felt like judgment. His slow, neutral voice sounded like boredom. But one day my perspective shifted because of something almost laughably small. My phone charger broke. I didn't ask for help, I didn't complain, I didn't even show frustration. The next morning, without a single word mentioned the night before, a new universal charger sat neatly on my desk. Still in the package, no note, no signature, no explanation, like a secret mission accomplished by someone who didn't want credit. And for the first time I wondered, maybe he does care. He just doesn't speak through sentences. Days later, I began noticing the microgestures. The way he waited at the door a few seconds longer when I walked home late. The way he lowered the TV volume when I studied in the living room. The way he carefully learned how to pronounce my name correctly without forcing me to adopt a shorter, easier version. It was confusing, touching, and slightly heartbreaking because it revealed a truth my previous self had ignored. Love has accents, and some accents are silent. In psychology, there is a concept called low arousal communication, common in Scandinavian culture, where love is expressed not through intensity, but consistency. No fireworks, no dramatic speeches, just stable actions that never fluctuate based on mood. This style of affection is like geothermal heat, invisible but always warm if you stand close enough. Slowly, my nervous system changed. I stopped expecting loud reassurance. My anxiety reduced not because he talked more, but because I learned to hear actions as if they were sentences. In that emotional safety, I started whispering English words out loud again. Not perfectly, but fearlessly. Every act of silent kindness became a psychological permission slip that said, "You can speak, even if you are imperfect." The irony? The less he spoke, the more I found my own voice. It was as if his silence wasn't a barrier, but a mirror reflecting back the truth. Connection isn't measured by vocabulary. It's measured by intention. And for the first time in years, I felt a tiny but undeniable message blooming inside my chest. You are not a guest here. You are part of the story. English practice breakthrough. Funny how breakthroughs never arrive in the dramatic Hollywood style we expect. Mine didn't come from a perfect study routine, a life-changing teacher, or some magical language learning hack. It appeared one calm afternoon while my stepfather and I were peeling potatoes in the kitchen. Yes, potatoes, the least romantic vegetable on earth. I dropped one on the floor and nervously tried to joke in English. Oops, gravity still works in Denmark. It wasn't clever, it wasn't fluent, and I probably sounded like a confused robot trying stand-up comedy. But something unexpected happened. He laughed. Not the loud kind, not the pity kind, just a genuine, soft, simple human laugh. And my brain, for the first time in years, didn't interpret English as danger but connection. That tiny moment opened a secret psychological door. It taught me this. Language does not improve by practicing words. It improves by practicing safety. Ever since that day, English didn't feel like an exam anymore. It felt like a doorway to belonging. I stopped memorizing vocabulary like a panic student and started using English to share tiny, ordinary moments. Not TED Talk sentences. Not dictionary words. Just simple living English. Is this enough salt? I'm learning slowly, but I'm trying. This weather makes me sleepy. Those small sentences built more confidence than any grammar book page I ever finished. In neuroscience, there is a principle called the social safety theory, which says that the human brain learns faster when it feels accepted, not evaluated. When I practiced English near someone who never corrected my accent, never rushed my sentence, and never looked impatient, my brain finally relaxed. And when the brain relaxes, language flows. That's why people speak English more naturally in late-night conversations, not in classrooms under fluorescent lights. So I changed my learning method into 3 quiet habits. Not loud, not heroic, just gentle. 1. I practiced English out loud only when I felt calm, even if it meant practicing for 5 minutes instead of 1 hour. Calm repetition beats anxious perfection. Point 2. I replaced perfection with curiosity. Instead of worrying, is this correct? I asked, does this help me connect? 3. I used English with real emotion even in the simplest lines. The brain remembers what the heart feels. Slowly, English changed from a weapon of insecurity into a tool of presence. My voice was still imperfect, my accent still foreign, and my grammar still occasionally confused, but for the first time I wasn't scared of my own mouth. I stopped aiming to sound like a native and started aiming to sound alive. And here is the oxygen level truth. Your English transforms the moment you stop learning to impress and start learning to belong. Scientific and psychological tools. Here's where the story gets slightly nerdy, but trust me, it's fun and surprisingly practical. Your brain is like a sponge, but not the kind you see in cartoons. It's a sponge that only soaks up what feels safe, meaningful, and emotionally relevant. Psychologists call this effective filtering. When your heart and nervous system are stressed, language input bounces off your mental walls like ping-pong balls. But when your environment signals safety, your neurons start building bridges instead of barricades. In Denmark, observing my stepfather's quiet love gave me the perfect laboratory. Every act of silent care, placing my breakfast plate, waiting for me to return home, learning to pronounce my name correctly, lowered my affective filter without me even realizing it. Neuroscience supports this. The brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, during positive social experiences. Oxytocin reduces stress and increases plasticity in areas like Broca's and Wernicke's regions, the parts of your brain responsible for producing and understanding speech. In short, the calmer, safer, and more accepted you feel, the faster your English improves. Let's break it down into practical psychological tools you can use anywhere. 1. Micro-connection exposure. Find small moments with others, even strangers, to speak English. A cashier, a neighbor, or an online friend. These tiny social victories release dopamine, your brain's reward chemical, reinforcing your willingness to speak. Point 2. Emotion-first practice. Pair English words with feelings, gestures, or mental images. Neuroscientists have shown that emotional encoding strengthens memory retention. When I said, "Oops, the potato fell," and laughed with him, my brain locked that phrase into a network stronger than any flashcard could. Point 3. Safe rehearsal spaces. Create environments where mistakes have zero social cost. Whisper sentences in your room, record short voice notes, or talk to pets. Your nervous system learns, and mistakes become training, not punishment. Even the simple act of speaking English in a context where love or acceptance exists rewires your neural pathways. You don't just memorize grammar rules. You form a living network capable of producing speech naturally. The stepfather's quiet consistency functioned like a daily microdosing of neural therapy, showing me that emotional security is the ultimate secret weapon in language learning. And here's the punchline. The brain doesn't care about perfection, it cares about safety. If your brain feels safe, it will teach you to speak like a native without you even noticing. That's why emotional connection and language acquisition are inseparable. Words follow the heart, not the textbook. Transformation and real result. Fast forward a few months and something remarkable happened. I noticed my English had changed. Not magically overnight, not after some intensive course, but slowly, quietly. Like the way snow covers a Danish street in layers you barely notice until it's everywhere. I could speak in full sentences without that paralyzing fear. I could ask questions, make mistakes, and even joke, and my voice didn't tremble as it used to. The change was not about vocabulary or grammar. It was about courage, connection, and emotional permission. I remember one evening clearly. I was in the living room reading aloud a short story in English, and my stepfather sat silently across the room. He didn't correct me, he didn't offer a single suggestion, yet he smiled. That smile, subtle and quiet, felt like a certificate of approval from life itself. And in that moment I realized something profound. My English had grown not because I studied harder, but because I felt safe enough to speak. My confidence wasn't built on flawless pronunciation. It was built on trust, belonging, and tiny acts of consistent support that told my nervous system, "You are okay here." Here's what science says about this transformation. When your affective filter is low, meaning your stress is low and your sense of safety is high, your brain strengthens neural pathways related to language production. In simpler terms, your brain learns best when you feel accepted. I became fluent not by memorizing tenses or idioms, but by being immersed in an emotionally safe environment where English was a tool for connection, not judgment. Slowly, the stepfather who once seemed distant became a silent teacher, a bridge to the world I wanted to speak into. And beyond the technical progress, something even deeper shifted inside me. I felt capable of being present in the world in a way I hadn't before. Speaking English was no longer terrifying. It was empowering. I learned that the voice inside me, long muted by fear, could finally express thoughts, feelings, and humor. I stopped fearing mistakes because I realized mistakes were not failures. They were proof that I was trying, connecting, living. Every small sentence, every hesitant question, every awkward joke became a step in a bigger journey. From isolation to belonging, from fear to confidence, from silence to voice, and in short, my transformation wasn't just linguistic. It was emotional, psychological, and deeply human. And this is the takeaway for anyone learning English or any new skill. Your environment and emotional safety matter more than any textbook or grammar rule. Give yourself permission to exist, to be imperfect, and to be heard, and suddenly the impossible starts to feel possible. Final message and emotional punch. Here's the final quiet truth I want you to take with you. Love, like language, is rarely born perfect. It is built piece by piece, moment by moment, often in silence, often in gestures that seem invisible at first. My stepfather never shouted, never lectured, never gave me the dramatic speeches we imagine love requires. Instead, he showed up consistently, patiently, and quietly. And through that, I learned that English, and perhaps life itself, grows the same way. It isn't about genius-level talent or instant fluency. It is about persistence, emotional safety, and small, meaningful actions repeated over time. Imagine if every time you wanted to speak English, you gave yourself permission to belong first, even if your sentences were clumsy. Imagine replacing fear with curiosity, judgment with connection, and isolation with moments of silent support. That is where true progress hides. Just like my stepfather's invisible acts of love built a bridge to my heart, every tiny moment of bravery in English builds a bridge to the world. And once you cross it, you realize, mistakes aren't enemies, they are stepping stones. Hesitation isn't failure. It's practice. Silence isn't shame. It's potential waiting for its voice. So what's the lesson? Your English can flourish when your heart feels safe. Your courage to speak is tied to your willingness to let yourself belong. And your growth, whether in language, love, or life, is rarely instant. But it is inevitable if you stay present, attentive, and consistent. The stepfather's quiet presence taught me more than any textbook ever could. Connection beats correction, patience beats pressure, and love, even silent love, builds what is lasting. And that's why I tell you this story today. Not because it's about me or Denmark or a single man's gestures, but because it proves something universal. Whether it's English relationships or personal growth, what is built slowly, thoughtfully, and with care lasts. Your voice matters. Your attempts matter. Your journey matters. And if you let yourself belong, your English and perhaps your life will speak back to you in ways you never expected.